Welcome, everybody. We are going to give folks just a moment to sign in, and then we'll get started. Well, welcome, everyone, and welcome to Work Hard, Play Hard, a working couple's guide to section hiking the Superior Hiking Trail with James and Madeline Didier. My name is Barbara Budd, and I'm the Volunteer and Education Coordinator for the Superior Hiking Trail Association, which is the nonprofit that protects, renews, and enhances the Superior Hiking Trail. We're excited to host this webinar today to help those of you who want to hike this entire amazing trail with a minimum of time away from work. To begin, I want to acknowledge that the Superior Hiking Trail is located on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe people. At the Superior Hiking Trail Association, we work to improve the resiliency and sustainability of the trail for future generations, work we've been doing for more than 35 years. We lead by harnessing the power of volunteers, supporters, partners, and trail users to break down barriers, engage participants, and create deeper relationships between people and nature. Our association is honored to serve as the stewards and promoters of this North Shore treasure, and we're pleased to welcome you to our trail community. Here's what to expect in tonight's webinar. If you have any questions, please send them to us directly using the chat feature. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. We are recording this webinar and we'll post it on our YouTube channel if you want to look at it again or have friends look at it. And now I'm pleased to introduce James and Madeline, who will share their experience of section hiking the SHT. I'll let them share more about their background. So without further ado, I am pleased to welcome James and Madeline Didier.
Thanks, Barbara. So we're really excited to be here tonight to talk about our experience section hiking the Superior Hiking Trail. And it's for us, we're really glad that we can give back to the community. It was something we thought about a lot while we were hiking the Superior Hiking Trail. Such an appreciation for such a beautiful place. And we were thinking, you know, what could we go out there and volunteer? Can we help do blue blazes? Can we pick up trash, or can we do some cleaning of the trails? And this opportunity kind of fell in our lap, and it's really something we've enjoyed doing. We've presented at the Midwest Mountaineer Expo this fall, and then we're going to give you the presentation tonight. One note, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to throw those in the chat. That will be something we can cover at the end of the presentation. So yeah, here we go. Work hard, play hard.
So to start off, we'll introduce a little bit about ourselves. So because this is a presentation on a working couples guide, we'll introduce ourselves both professionally and as hikers. So this is my husband, James Didier. He's a high school chemistry teacher. He is also very well versed in the outdoors. He's an apprentice mountain guide with AMGA, and he's also certified wilderness first responder. He has climbed 35 Colorado 14ers, And in his spare time, he likes to run and ferment things. So he is definitely more of an experienced hiker than I am.
I should add that we are not professional through hikers. We are not pros. We are not experts on the spear hiking trail, but we hope to share at least our experience with hiking the spear hiking trail tonight. I'm here with Madeline Didier. Her occupation is an acoustic consultant. Previously a summer camp counselor. She's climbed 1 Colorado 14er as of this summer, and she likes to play piano in her spare time.
And for our trail identities, if you are familiar with through hiking, you may be familiar with the trail name tradition of having a specific name for your trail self. And so James had the trail name of Lady Shorts, and he got this name because on one particular weekend, he threw a pair of shorts in his bag and didn't look at whose they were. And it wasn't until we got there that he realized they were actually mine. So he rocked them all weekend, and hence the name Lady Shorts.
This is the problem when you buy your wife the same kind of pants as you. We made it work. So Madeline's trail name is Young Crypto. And this is something that she actually got late in the, it's based on cryptosporidium, right? And it's a name that she was kind of given at the end of our journey. This last summer, if you were out on the trail, you know that we had drought conditions, especially in August, and we were having a hard time finding clean water sources. We were using a water filter, but we had to resort to some unpleasant beaver ponds, and Madeline actually ended up getting cryptosporidium. Kind of odd because I didn't get it, and we drank the same water the whole time, but that's where her name comes from.
So what was our goal? We set out to complete the Superior Hiking Trail in about 1 year, and we wanted to do all this using limited to no PTO. And so we kind of set the 1 year goal just to have a start and end point before the cold season set in again. And also we are expecting our first baby this May. So it was kind of a good time to try to finish off an aggressive hiking goal. So in order to accomplish this, we needed to really maximize the efficiency of our trips. We also weren't afraid to take advantage of creature comforts where possible. Roughing it wasn't our #1 goal. There is something to be said about being a through hiker and supporting yourself completely. That is an accomplishment in itself. And for our purposes, we were just trying to complete the trail and do that and use whatever resources were available to us in order to do so.
That's right. So a little glimpse at the trail here in this map, and also about what the spear hiking trail is. And many of you know this, but it's 300 miles or approximately 300 miles in northern Minnesota of trails, and that there's more if you include the spur trails that go out to things like state parks and parking lots. There's 100 backcountry fee-free campsites and about 40,000-ish elevation gain, 40,000 feet of elevation gain. You can go northbound or southbound. At the southern terminus, we're talking about the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. You don't quite get a glimpse of it in this map. At the northern terminus, it's the Minnesota-Canada border.
So those of you who have hiked the Superior Hiking Trail or parts of it before know that it is very well marked through most of it, thanks to the Superior Hiking Trail Association. So when you're on the main hiking trail, you see these blue blazes periodically, sometimes placards or mileage kiosks that support the wayfinding. So it's generally really easy to know when you're on the trail and when you may have gotten off track. Sometimes we would ask each other, hey, have you seen a blue blaze for a while? And then we would know we were on our way. There's also white blazes. And if you see white blazes, you're on a spur trail. So those are also well marked. So yeah, just kind of some general wayfinding, and we'll kind of get more into that.
So before each of our trips, because we were doing multiple trips, being section hikers, we used a number of resources along the way to help plan for the trip. Things at your disposal are things like the SHTA website, You can use things like trail conditions and trail news, really helpful to know what you're getting into. Sometimes there's sections of the trail that need to be closed for various reasons, or there's incidents that have been happening. So great to check that out. Also check out the SHT Facebook group. I feel like those trail conditions are really up to date. You get users that are out there sometimes frequently, and you're getting updates there. Also guidance from other trail users is just priceless. And then finally, there's the SHT data book, the guidebook, and maps. And we used a combination of the data book and maps because we were kind of unaware of the guidebook at the time. We found those useful. I'm actually in this image, I'm reading one of the maps. I think they're no longer in production, but there are there's another way of getting maps, as we'll share later on. Those sources are good for things like trail section statistics, so we could plan out our trip more easily, plan the sort of campsites that we'd aim for, and look for kind of waypoints, what sort of mileage would be reasonable for us within a given weekend. Also, pro tip, at the end of a long day, when you need to soothe your aching feet, dip them in a cold stream, and that's a great way to rejuvenate.
So as we stated before, we completed the trail by section hiking. And so I kind of wanted to define what is through hiking versus section hiking. So Wikipedia defines through hiking as the act of hiking an established end-to-end trail or long distance trail with continuous footsteps in one direction, northbound or southbound for the SHT specifically. Whereas section hiking refers to hiking a trail one section at a time without continuity, not necessarily in sequence with the other sections or within one hiking season. So although we did our hiking sequentially northbound, we did this over several seasons. So by the Wikipedia definition, we were in fact section hikers.
This is a cool photo of Madeline here walking across oh gosh, how would you describe that?
Kind of a big smooth rock. I
don't know. Well, what I liked about this photo is the lichen that had just kind of like been erased from the face of this on the path, as you can see there, it's kind of just pushed off to the side. And what's really cool about these rocks too is, and we noticed this as we were going northbound, sometimes you'd see these scrapes in the rock, and that's from the glaciers that kind of slowly carve these little slots in them. So look for that next time you're out there, for these long what looks like score lines, and that's just from ice. That's all that pressure built up. Really cool.
I guess I'll just add one more thing. What I thought you were getting at is when you're in this kind of terrain, you'll sometimes even see the blue blazes directly on the rock in front of you instead of the trees.
Yes. So when we were exploring this idea of defining section hiking and through hiking, we came across one of our most well-known trails in America, the Appalachian Trail, well known for its length, and they're actually moving towards a system where they're calling hikers 2,000 milers for completing the trail. And they're kind of moving a little bit away from the section hiker through hiker, or at least redefining it. So by their definition, the only difference between a section hiker and a through hiker is whether it was completed in 12 months or not. So you're still considered a through hiker, even if you leave the trail and come back. You don't even have to do it in a continuous section. So I guess by their definition, we are through hikers.
So it depends who you ask. So here is our specific timeline, how we completed the trail. So we started in August 2020 and we ended almost exactly a year later in August 2021. And here in the blue is the breakdown of how many miles we completed each trip. So most of these trips were weekends. Some were long holiday weekends where we had Memorial Day tacked on or Labor Day tacked on. Let's see, I think our shortest trip, September 2020, our main goal was not mileage that weekend. We were kind of hanging out in Duluth at an Airbnb and just sort of enjoying what all Duluth has to offer, because that's really the only more I guess, urban part of the trail. So, but the rest of these are mostly over weekends, with the exception of the August 2021 section. I think that was about 4 days, but still no time taken off work. And the loophole there is I was between jobs and James had the summer off. So
That's right. No time taken off work. So this little map that I put together, kind of to help visualize those sections that Madeline was just talking about. And because we went northbound, you can see trip 1 down there was actually a significant trip. Actually, I'm going to go back. That was that 43.9 mile, and that was in 2 days. So both days were over 20 miles. It felt like long mileage for our first stint on the Spear Hiking Trail. One reason you might consider putting on some longer mileage in that section is that up until really up through Duluth and all the way to Martin Road, there are basically no campsites, although you have some options. There is a campsite at the southern terminus that we did stay at, but from there you have to kind of get creative, and you have some options. We're going to mention them later, but things like campgrounds along the way. What else to mention here? Madeline mentioned how we spent some time in Duluth on that second short trip too. I went to college there, and I was really excited about taking a weekend to show Madeline around Duluth. And so, yeah, it wasn't all about mileage there, and we did just kind of a short day trip.
yeah, it was more about breweries and milkshakes on that trip.
That's right. Again, not exactly roughing it here, but you don't always have to rough it. I think that might be all I wanted to say about this, but kind of a helpful map to look at here. Yeah.
So here's some additional trip stats. Our shortest day was our very first day of the entire trail. It was 1.9 miles. And that mileage came from driving to the Southern Terminus trailhead and hiking in to the Southern Terminus. There is one campsite at the very close to the Southern Terminus. And that's, like James said, one of the only campsites in that southernmost portion. So that first day, we just hiked in to get to that campsite. And as you can see, I am wearing sandals in this photo, which we would not recommend for anything longer than a 1.9 mile day. But this particular section was pretty forgiving. We hiked in with not our full equipment. And then on the next day, as we continued northbound, we passed our car in the parking lot and were able to switch out some gear and sort of reevaluate what we were carrying. So that's our shortest day. And then our longest day, you can see my watch here, the steps and mileage that I got for the day, over 26 miles. And that was one particular day when we did have some additional support. We traveled a lot lighter for the first 20 miles of the trail. And then we had some of our trail angels, family members meet us at a trailhead to switch out our packs and give us our overnight packs with our tent and sleeping bags. So we were able to accomplish a lot more than we may have otherwise been able to.
And we often get asked the question of, oh, how many miles are you doing in a day? And it's, I could give you an average for miles per day, but it wouldn't be as meaningful as if I gave you miles per day, depending on the circumstances. And so what I have here is kind of a breakdown of, our Fridays were days where we're trying to work nearly a full shift, drive up north, because we live in the cities, drive up north and still get some miles in order to get to a campsite. Those tended to be short days because we had so much going on average about 6 miles on Fridays. On Saturdays, though, or days that we didn't have to drive, we were pushing more like 18.5 miles per day on average. And then Sundays or days where we needed to drive home, but not work, those days were about 12.6 miles per day. And I think this is a little bit more telling of the sort of mileage that we were trying to get in. But results might vary, and you have to really kind of feel it out for what you're capable of. Oh, do you want to talk about the image here? This is some looping that we saw on the side of where a trail hit a road, and you might see this yourself. in late May, early June timeframe, I think.
Yeah, I think this was early June.
It's beautiful when you come across this, but it's usually out, it's going to be in opening areas like coming upon a road. And it's a great photo opportunity because of the lush purple pinks. Did we even see some white looping?
I think so, yeah. So how do we travel? As you can imagine, section hiking, there's a little more to be coordinated as far as how you're going to get from one place to the next. It's not just a single shuttle from top to bottom, but it's a lot of in and out of trailheads for each section that we completed. So for us specifically, we had our family who were kind enough to help us get our car from one place to another and shuttle us between trailheads for a few of our trips. So family and friends can be a really good option and a good way to kind of invite them on your journey with you. Another option is rideshare, although this isn't widely available along the trail route. I think it's really only an option near Duluth. And even then it's not as easy to get an Uber as it would be in Minneapolis per se. So I think we only took 1 or 2 Ubers, and that was when we were in Duluth. So I wouldn't recommend that as your primary option. The most reliable way to really get in and out of trailheads on the Superior Hiking Trail is shuttles. There are several shuttle companies along the trail that we used. These include Harriet Quarles Transportation out of Grand Marais, Cadillac Cab out of Silver Bay, Superior Shuttle out of Two Harbors, and North Shore Shuttles out of Superior. So we actually only use Cadillac Cab and North Shore Shuttles, but we've heard good things about all of them. And sometimes we found that it made the most sense to contact whichever shuttle company is kind of closest to where we were planning to hike for that specific weekend, because that can help to reduce the rates that you're paying for the mileage.
Yeah, try them all. You know, as you go north, you're going to probably change up who you're using because they're charging by the mile. I would say that I think some of these shuttle services, if they haven't already, there's at least talk about them opening up multiple drivers so that maybe they have, like, I think maybe Matt at North Shore, he had somebody he wanted to be available near Grand Marais, or at least close to Grand Marais. So look into your options and keep in mind that they're going to charge the price it takes to drive to you and back. So that's a factor. Now, as far as where we stayed, while we were on the trail, with the exception of a few nights, we mostly stayed in fee-free campsites. No fees, permits, or reservations required for those. They're usually located near a natural water source, but not always. And then there's usually a tent pad, fire ring, bench, and a latrine. In this image here, we're at Reeves Campground, where we had actually a visitor that night, but more on that in a moment.
So yeah, like James said, this is the Reeves campsite directly on the SHT. And one thing we noticed is there's quite a variety of benches at the campsites that you'll see. So this particular one had much more primitive benches with just some rocks to sit on, whereas some campsites had more of a built bench. So you'll kind of get a mix of campsites as you hike along, but we found them all to be quite nice. So when we weren't camping, when we weren't camping on the SHT, we had some other options that we utilized. One was public campgrounds. As James mentioned, there really aren't a lot of campsites in that southernmost portion. So we ended up hiking about a mile off trail to the Fond du Lac campground, and that's a public campground. While a mile doesn't sound like a lot after a 20-mile day, it did feel like a bit of a hike, but there aren't a lot of other options. Spirit Mountain also has a campground, which I think may be a little closer to the trail. However, it was closed due to COVID when we were out there. And then there's also a public campground up in Grand Marais, which we stayed at when we had family to shuttle us to and from different trailheads. So this picture in the lower left corner is our, I think it was our second night on the trail going north at the Fond du Lac campground. And we did not have a reservation, but they do, and the campground was full, but they do take overflow SHT hikers. I think there were a few groups of SHT hikers there that they kind of just put on this, put in this field of grass. So they are accommodating. But these other two options where we stayed was a Vrbo vacation rental and an Airbnb. And while these are much different than your typical SHT campsite, like we said, we took advantage of some creature comforts. This middle photo is our vacation rental. This was on a particularly cold spring weekend. The days were beautiful, but the nights were down to below 40 degrees. So we were happy to have a warm bed on those nights when we were putting a lot of miles in. And then when we were on our going through Duluth, we stayed in an Airbnb, and this last photo is of James with the cute dog that we found at that Airbnb.
He lived there.
Yeah, he lived there.
It's not just some random dog. Yeah. While you're talking about the campgrounds, I thought, there are other campgrounds along the way that we're not mentioning here, but none that we stayed at. So you'll just have to look into it if you're trying to hit up a campground along the way. And Madeline, you should probably talk about this slide with the food, because you are our organizer of foods. We ate really well on the trail. We don't normally eat like this, but it was a real treat and kept us energized for those long mile days.
Yeah, as you can imagine, when you're putting in 20-mile days, you burn a lot of calories, so you kind of have to keep eating as you go. So there are a lot of commercially available options, such as Mountain House and some other good options for trail food. That's pretty lightweight. And while those are really good options, we tried to choose some options that were a little more budget friendly, just because we were going so often, and I was up for the challenge. So pictured in the middle here, you can see one particular weekend of food packing. So we had a lot of dried food, lightweight things, oatmeal cups. We liked these oatmeal cups because then once we finished our oatmeal, we would make our chai tea latte directly in that cup. On the left here, you can see a mashed potato gravy bowl with some dehydrated broccoli. I think we ate that with a turkey jerky stick. If you look on Pinterest or Google, there's a lot of resources with ideas for trail food and trail meals. I guess the main keys are lightweight, high calorie, keep it interesting, keep it varied, and it can be kind of a fun thing to plan as you're planning your trip. In the upper right corner, you can see James and myself with our Snickers bars. This was our celebratory snack once we reached the 100-mile point on the trail. And then in the lower right hand corner, you can see some fresh raspberries that James found probably in late August on the trail. And this fresh fruit is a very welcome snack when you're eating dehydrated packaged food all day.
And I'll add on to that, the Snickers bar thing at the 100-mile thing. I think sometimes when you have these long days, you're just looking for anything to celebrate or break it up. And we found a lot of ways to do that, whether it was singing songs while we were on the trail about just random things, a lot of parodies. We had our little 100-mile, 200-mile, 300-mile celebratory. I don't know if they're always Snicker breaks, but something to break up the time. You'll come up with ideas as you're out there. But for us, yeah, it was treats and songs and camp songs, right? Madeline taught me many summer camp songs while I was out there. You want to sing any right now?
No.
All right. So I think maybe I can talk about this one right here.
Sure.
The image in the top right here was a nice break that we took when we were going through the Duluth section. I don't know, were we Was that the day that we were doing our day trip there?
I'm not sure, but there is a bakery feet off of the trail in Duluth as you're kind of leaving Duluth. So that was a nice stop, different from your typical trail food, and that's where we got our croissants. Other foods we enjoyed, as I said, we kind of had our own personal trail angels. My parents supported us on a lot of this trip, so this picture of us around the table with the camp chairs is at one trailhead on our longest stay, where my parents met us with tacos and pie and root beer and just the most delicious feast after a long day of trail food and lots of miles. So that was kind of a treat. And then my parents were also with us that weekend. We were in the vacation rental, and so we had some nice home cooked meals. Also a little bit of a change from your typical dehydrated trail food.
As far as how fast we moved while we were on the trail, it's worth noting that you really have to be realistic about what you can accomplish out there. I think we tend to overestimate what we're capable of. And one of the things that's really going to slow you down is a weighted pack. So if you can reduce the weight of your pack, you're going to travel lighter or travel faster. And that's just a for sure thing. Reducing weight is going to make you travel faster. There was actually a study done. I feel like somebody did their dissertation on this when I was reading it. It was very well done. And they were talking about, it was the Appalachian Trail, but they're talking about success rates on the Appalachian Trail. And they looked at different factors. And one of the biggest factors on how successful people were on the Appalachian Trail was their pack weight. And you might be able to guess what the correlation was there. There was an indirect relation with pack weight and success, meaning lighter packs did end up meaning more successful completions of through hikes. You give up a little comfort there, but again, if you're section hiking this anyway, maybe there's ways that you can find to cut weight without giving up comfort. With packs, we found that we averaged about 3 miles per hour moving, and that turned into about 2 to 2.5 miles per hour overall for our day. And that's because we did breaks, right? And you're going to have to factor in breaks when you're hiking, because you need to take breaks for lunch, just general snack breaks, including maybe stopping for some fresh raspberries. Bathroom breaks take time. Photos, especially if you're a shutterbug and you take lots of photos, that's going to take a lot of time. And then save some time for getting lost, because even though everything's well marked, it happens. Happened to us twice on the trail, and so you might need to backtrack a little bit. Sometimes you just get in the zone and you start looking at your feet and you're not paying attention. Yeah, Madeline's taking a little break here on the rock, maybe I don't quite recall, just a general break.
Catching some sun.
Yeah.
So another thing we wanted to mention is the idea of trail angels and leave no trace. So if you've hiked on the Superior Hiking Trail before, you may have seen trail magic lying around. And what this is, if you're not familiar, is sometimes people will put out coolers with cold pops or chocolate or other snack for through hikers as kind of a treat. But that's actually against leave no trace principles to leave food out on the trail unattended. So we just wanted to remind you that that is a don't in terms of leave no trace on the trail.
I'm going to cover the do's here. And while leaving a cooler on the side of the trail is a don't, you could always offer cold beer to hikers at the trailhead.
Another don't is to leave food unattended on the trail, kind of similar to coolers, but same goes with food. You don't want wild animals getting into it. Yeah, also against leave no trace principles.
But you could just meet your hiker friends at a trailhead with tacos and pies.
Don't leave garbage at campsites. This campfire with garbage in it is something we saw at one of the campsites at Bean and Bear Lake. Don't put garbage in your fires.
We had plenty of examples of things not to do in that particular section of Bean and Bear Lake. You could leave the trail better than how you found it, though.
And the last don't cut switchbacks or take shortcuts on the trail. This can cause erosion amongst other things.
You can hike in to meet your friends at the end of a very long day. And we had this happen on a number of occasions where we had a family maybe nearby. A couple weekends I can think of where end of a long day and all of a sudden there's some friendly faces about a mile from the trailhead. It really it gets you going again when you're thinking that you'd rather be maybe laying down than on your feet. One other thing I'll mention about Leave No Trace is that you can always review these principles at lnt.org, and the guidebook has more rules on trail use. Right.
Yeah, trail use and leave no trace principles directly related to the Superior Hiking Trail. So yeah, some more about trail angels. Like we said, we kind of had our own personal trail angels with my parents who supported us along a lot of the trail. And I'm just going to throw out this quote: trail magic is best given in person. So if you do, whether you're planning to be someone else's trail angel or you have friends and family who are interested in supporting you, a good reminder to share with whoever may be doing the supporting. So some other benefits we found with our trail angels is we were able to reduce our hiking weight. Like we said, we had some day packs, and we'll get more into that. Increase hiking speed, morale boost, and sharing our adventure with others. Yeah, I think we all had a great time doing portions of the trail together and sharing that experience together.
This is one of those weekends where we had the Lupin and Bloom behind us here. So I'm not sure how much time I really need to spend on this slide, except for mentioning that there are resources out there for helping to pack. And, I added things to each of these little categories here, but if you're trying to find a good source for packing for a trip like this, I would say look to the 10 essentials. I think different organizations have, websites that have this kind of stuff, like REI, for instance. I think they have a whole page dedicated to the 10 essentials. And so, within these, there are things that we specifically packed that we're going to meet those needs. But I'm not going to spend time just pointing them out individually, but we do have tips at the end of this presentation where we kind of get into some specific things that came in really handy. Including, I'll point out some things just in this image that we're looking at here. We have Madeline in the bottom, obviously with the Lupin in the background. She's wearing a raincoat. Definitely bring a raincoat. Rain can come out of nowhere. I even have a rain fly on my pack in the top image there to keep bags dry.
So as you're thinking about pack weight and thinking about packing for the trail, it's really important to think about what you can leave behind. Something might seem like just one more thing, but it really adds up quickly. So these are things we recommend leaving behind that we actually saw on the trail. And this probably varies from person to person. You might say that some of these things are necessities for you, but for us, we recommend leaving behind the boxed wine, extra changes of clothes, with the exception of underwear and socks, heavy food packaging. As you may have noticed, we packed a lot of lightweight, kind of just add water sort of packaging, or even reduce the packaging at home if we could. Change of shoes, folding chairs. There are ultralight versions of chairs that if you really find this an important comfort that you want at the end of a long day of hiking. Shampoo and conditioner, coolers, full-size pillows, duffel bags. Yes, we did see these on the trail. We recommend leaving these behind when you're out there, unless you are spending the night at a vacation rental or Airbnb that night.
And Duluth, Two Harbors, they have plenty of good options for if you like craft beer. Maybe you just want to save the celebration for after the trip, and you can celebrate at one of those local breweries. As far as pack distribution, this is worth just mentioning because it helped us be more successful. We distributed our packs among the two of us so that Madeline was carrying the cookware and food, her own clothes and her water bottle, while I was carrying the tent, sleeping bags and sleeping pads, my clothes and water bottle. And while our packs started about equal, what we found is that as the trip went on, Madeline's pack got lighter, and it allowed us to actually travel at about the same speed the whole time. It kind of brought equity into our pacing so that we kind of stuck with each other, and we it just made it easier to hike.
Yeah, as my endurance gave out, my pack got lighter, so it worked well. So we had kind of another set of equipment when we were doing these day hikes when we weren't sleeping out on the trail. And so for this, we were also just really bringing the day essentials. So I had a fanny pack where I essentially just had sunglasses, my camera, which is my phone, and my portable charger, maybe a granola bar, maybe a chapstick, but really that's about it. And then James had a trail running backpack, which is a pretty lightweight, small, compact pack. And he would carry our raincoats, our food and water bottles for the day, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, the water filter, and then our wayfinding resources. But that's really all we were taking when we were just out for the day.
And I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but these day hikes, our trail angels really made this possible because we were starting somewhere and we were ending somewhere, and we weren't staying on the trail on these particular days that we were able to do this. But yeah, that lightened pack is just, it's a great thing if you're trying to get the mileage in. Bears, they're going to be a consideration on the Spear Hiking Trail. You should be bringing a bear canister or a bear bag, and Ursac is one brand of bear bag that you could bring. And if you jump on like the SHT Facebook page, you're going to hear different people recommend different things. We personally went with an Ursac or a bear bag style, and that prevents, so the benefits of a bear bag in our mind were it might be a little lighter than a canister, but it's definitely takes up less volume. So it's like a bulletproof Kevlar that they use. The bears can't tear through it or bite through it. And so we used that for our trip. And it was actually at the Reeves campsite that I mentioned earlier. We had a visitor that night. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night. It was just after midnight. I heard some noise out by where our bear bag was tied to the tree. And I kind of figured it was some sort of big game, but I thought about it. I thought, I'm not going to wake Madeline up for this. There's no reason for her to lose sleep over something we can do nothing about. So in the morning, I got up and I went straight out to the bear bag. And sure enough, there's, teeth marks in the bear bag where it probably was trying to clamp down on it or try to pull it. And the bag was intact. While it had hole marks in it, the bear was not able to get into our food. And actually, there weren't even holes in our bags that had food in them. But the lesson learned there was that we really needed a way to scent proof these too. So we ended up getting the OpSac made by the same company. That's a scent proof bag that goes inside the bear bag. You should be looking into the conditions that you're getting into. Some campsites have known bear occurrences like this.
Yeah, so like James said, there's some bear occurrences that particularly when people don't use bear bags and bear canisters for their food. And this particular sign that says camping is not advised at Leskinen Creek campsite, we saw about 10 miles into one of our hiking days. And where had we come from the night before? Well, we had camped at Leskinen Creek campsite. So thankfully we had no bear running while we were there. But this is just kind of a reminder to use your resources to the best of your ability. Check the website, the Facebook site before you go to try to avoid any warnings like this. We saw it 10 miles too late the next morning, but pay attention to signage. Usually these are on the mileage kiosks. And yeah, do what you can to avoid staying at places where camping is not advised.
We did end up seeing two bears in one day, actually. In the image on the far right here, we're going down to fill up our water, and I had just come down to this creek here. This was Durfee Creek, south of Grand Marais. And what was that, north? South of Grand Marais.
I think so,
right?
Yeah.
And I looked up the stream. There's a bear standing right there getting a drink. I think the bear was even more scared of me than I was of it, or more startled anyway. And the bear ended up running off, heading south there. So that was a really cool experience for us to see that. And just a little short while later, when we were doing that Highway 61 crossover, if you've been on the trail before, this is one of the times that you cross Highway 61 after the lake walk. And we had seen a bear ran out right in front of us there. There's an image of it here. And it was actually a collared bear. You can kind of see the collar on its neck. So really cool to see that.
All right, ticks, mosquitoes, bugs. We got lucky. We weren't really seeing a lot of some of what we've heard of being really the worst times when bugs are out on the trail. That said, we did have times when we would stop hiking for a snack, and we really did notice them at that point. So if you're trying to really avoid that, if you check the Facebook page, there's oftentimes people give their own reports of what they've experienced in certain sections of the trail and at certain times. But in general, it's a good idea to check for ticks, bring a head net, in case you're in areas that are really uncomfortable, bring bug spray. Here you can see James has his pants tucked into his socks. That's a good way to keep ticks from climbing up on you.
Not stylish, but that's all right.
Not stylish. We did see one woman wearing shorts out on the trail, and she said that she had found something like 15 or more ticks on herself within a span of a week. I think we had a total of 2 ticks for the entire trail, and I think there's something to wearing long pants to keep them from climbing up on you. So we would recommend going the pant route if you're comfortable with that.
This image is not an optical illusion. This bench is sideways. All right. Keep your dog on a leash. That's a rule, an SHTA rule. And, we went 310 miles, and we almost went the whole 310 miles without a negative dog experience. We didn't have a dog ourselves, but about maybe 10 miles from finishing, 5 to 10 miles, there's actually a section of the Spear Hiking Trail that is it's the highest elevation in the whole trip. And it was right around there that we had a dog run up on us, and it didn't have an owner. It ran up and it was barking at us and very aggressive and approached us. We both actually used our hiking poles to keep it away from us. And it was just a very negative encounter because, we were thinking about how are we going to get out of this situation when we're out here by ourselves and there's a dog without an owner and the dog is not about to leave us alone. Luckily, what seemed like an eternity later, an owner did run up and grab a hold of the dog. And we reminded him that dog should have been on a leash, especially if it's not a friendly one. So that was really unfortunate to see that. But here we have a positive dog encounter, and we actually know this person. So doing the right thing.
So river and stream crossings, you'll see a few of these on the trail as you move along north to south or south to north. They often present the greatest objective danger on the trail. We were pretty lucky with the seasons we were traveling. You may recall last summer was pretty dry, so we didn't have some typically tall, high waters were much lower than usual when we were crossing them. So we kind of looked out with the ease of our stream crossings most of the time. So most are kind of a simple skip across. This was a particularly easy stream crossing that had kind of a stone bridge set out. But hiking poles, we realize, can be a big help with stabilization on some more difficult stream crossings with wet rocks that may have less reliable footholds.
If you check the conditions before you go, you're probably not going to be surprised at what you come across, because people are really good about saying how different stream or river crossings are at that given time. All right, so on to the tips, tricks, and trail hacks. The first category here, we're talking about planning. And I had mentioned the data book and guidebook. Get a copy of those. I don't have any experience with the guidebook, but we hear good things with that. The data book, we use that a lot for determining mileage, things to expect. In some ways, it had silly updates, like there's a power line corridor coming up. And again, that's one of those things, after a long day, we got really excited about a power line corridor because it was just the next item to check off the box. So that's a fun one. A northbound versus southbound consideration. So we did our trip southbound, and if you're going to section hike it, I would actually recommend that. I think it was actually the better choice of the two. And there's a couple reasons why. We felt like the terrain got more difficult as you went north, with the exception of that little section just below Duluth. That's actually it was kind of a tough section. In some ways, I think a hidden gem for sure. But as you go north, you're going to probably experience a little bit more elevation change. And so maybe you're a little bit more in shape, or maybe you're a little bit more used to that terrain as you move north. Also, a big thing to consider is that you're going to have to, if you're going to do this in multiple trips, you're going to have to meet these, you're going to have to, if you're coming from the cities like we were, as you drive north, you're going to actually drive by the previous sections that you've done, which was really fun for us because, as we're driving by Two Harbors or whatever it is, we kind of look over and we're like, oh, that was that one trailhead. Do you remember what happened in this section? So it's kind of a good way to remember the previous trips that we did. If you do it the opposite direction, you're not really going back to the areas that you've gone by. Additionally, I feel like there's another consideration. One thing that we've heard is that if you start at the north side, there is no cell service there.
Oh yeah, it can be harder to, if you're trying to plan a shuttle or a ride, it can be hard to coordinate that. If you're looking for someone to pick you up there, it can be easier to get dropped off at the northern terminus.
I guess that'd be a reason to
That's
go
the reason
southbound.
to go the other direction.
Okay. Check the trail conditions updates on websites. I mentioned that one. Start early. Sometimes it's not all about traveling fast. We just put in long days most of the time. Those days that we did 20 miles, we didn't do those waking up at 10 a.m. We were getting up when the sun came up, making breakfast and getting on the trail right away. So, the early you start, there's some added benefits that come with that, including maybe the choice of the best campsite. Don't leave valuables in vehicles, or if you do, don't make them visible, because unfortunately that's a consideration we have to think about these days, because there are stolen items, broken windshields, and so forth, or broken windows. Also, this is an interesting one. Sometimes we would be walking for a while, and I mentioned how sometimes you get in a groove and you start just looking at your feet and you're not paying attention to where you're going. And there's a couple times, well, there's many times where we're like, do we miss a turn? Does this look right? If you turn around, that's another option for seeing blaze blue markers. And that's another option for knowing that you're on the right track. So something to consider. Take a look behind you. If you see blue blaze, you're probably still on the right track. And then what sort of requirements do you have for a favorite camping site? We had things that we looked for, like water sources. Look into this ahead of time so you can make a plan on a campsite that meets your expectations. On the right side here, these images, I had mentioned how we use these maps, but they're no longer in print. We like these maps just for like, you go through the map and, oh, we just got through map 2. But now you have some other options, including the trail atlas here, that's on the bottom right. We don't have experience with that, but we hear good things. And also Avenza Maps is an option. If you have ever used this before, it's something that you can have on your phone, and it allows you to actually kind of keep track of your location. I have never used Avenza Maps, but I've seen more and more people on the trail with it. So a consideration if you are looking for ways of keeping, staying on the trail. And honestly, I think it was pretty well marked. If you're looking for a well-marked trail that you're not going to get lost, I mean, Spear Hiking Trail is pretty good.
Yeah. All right, some food tips, tricks, and trail hacks. We already mentioned our chai tea. James and I don't drink coffee, but we do like a chai tea latte in the morning, especially when it's cold out on the trail. So we would buy those cardboard oatmeal cups and then repurpose them as our tea mugs. We also found that James mentioned the Ursack and the Opsack. We took advantage of Mentos and snacks when morale is down. When you're hiking miles on end, the trail's so beautiful, but sometimes you get in sections where it's a little repetitive and your legs are tired, and just to be able to pop a Mento or a sweet tart in your mouth every couple of minutes can really help you keep going. Also smart water bottles. We found these to be a really good shape to fit in the size of our packs. They're a lot lighter weight than something like a stainless steel water bottle. So we would buy them at the beginning of the weekend, use them all weekend, and then start again on our next trip with a new smart water bottle. And then our water filter, and I'll let James kind of speak on that.
Yeah, I've tried different water filters and I really like this one that we're using here. This is the Catadion Be Free, but I guess it's very similar to the Sawyer Squeeze. If you have that similar experience, it's one of those where you fill up the bag and then you can, I suppose you can let gravity kind of let it drip out the membrane, or by squeezing it, you're pushing it through the filter. And then that's how we filled up our smart water bottles. I liked it because we were able to move quickly. Jumping down to a stream, filling up the bag really quick. I could even do that and we could just keep moving and maybe filter out the next campsite. So a consideration there. One thing to keep in mind, big consideration with water filters, is that those filters on those, they are not meant to be frozen. You can actually not only reduce the lifespan if they freeze, but they might not work at all. So on one particular night, because we did some of our trips were on those shoulder seasons, you know, the fall and the spring when they're cold nights. On one particular night, we thought the low was supposed to be around 40 or something like that. It ended up getting below freezing that night. So when I woke up in the morning, I had my I had our water bag, the Catadion Be Free, was hanging from the tree, and there's icicles inside, which was an issue. I would say that if you're even going to get to 40 degrees at night, take that filter out and maybe stuff it in if you're going to be wearing a coat to bed or something, or put it somewhere near your body or in your tent, so that there's even less likelihood that it freezes over. Because the last thing you want to do is destroy your water filter and then risk getting something like Giardia or cryptosporidium.
Okay. All right. Some additional tips on staying warm and clothing. So we mentioned tucking pant legs into socks to keep the ticks off. Also, layering moisture wicking clothing is important for as your body temperature is changing throughout the day. Hand warmers and sleeping bags. So we had a couple weekends where it was quite cold on the trail, and so we found it was kind of nice to have hand warmers along to warm up as we're going to sleep. We also unzipped our sleeping bags towards each other on a couple of especially cold nights, just to keep as much body heat as we could, keeping us warm. Fires before dark. So in the fringe seasons, as you know, it gets dark really early, and it's kind of hard to resist going to bed at 6 p.m. And so how we kind of combated this is starting a fire. It's a good way to stay warm, and a kind of a thing to keep you busy, to at least hold out till maybe 8 p.m. And down coat at night. Yeah, sometimes as soon as we arrived at our campsites, we would throw on our down coat just to kind of keep warm as the sun was going down. And having a down coat that you can stuff in your pack was definitely something we would recommend. Even on some summer weekends, we still had our down coats with us.
And a note about the fires, make sure to check to make sure there's not a fire ban going on. You know, this last summer, I know there was a fire ban during what seemed like a significant portion of the summer. So yeah, check that. That obviously wasn't the case when we took this photo here, but you'll see that when you go to check the conditions. Trail runners. I would personally, I think we both enjoyed wearing our trail runners. These were actually my shoes here after a trip when I went to go dip into Lake Superior, cool off there. We both wore Ultras, the zero drop trail runners. We personally like them. I always like trail runners for moving quickly, even in mixed terrain, because they're light, and while they don't offer ankle support, sometimes that just isn't needed. And we both felt like these were perfect for this trail. Do you want to talk about portable chargers?
Sure. So we used an Anchor portable charger that we would just charge before we went, and that was plenty of battery to keep my phone going for as many pictures that I was taking for a weekend, more than enough charge. So would recommend having something like that along, especially if you're using your phone for your maps and for calling someone once you get to the trailhead. You want to make sure that's not going to die on you halfway through your trip. Want to take this one?
Yeah, hiking poles. Madeline mentioned that they're really helpful for stream crossings. I mentioned how they're helpful for keeping aggressive dogs away from you. But they also are great for those hilly sections, taking a little bit of weight off your legs and putting it into your upper body. CCAP, I've got mine right here. This was actually a recommendation I got from my father-in-law. And it's an awesome app. One of those things again where, you know, I felt like I could just like so Seek is made by iNaturalist, and it's a way of looking up different species. And you kind of, you know, you put your camera up to a species of, maybe it's a flower, maybe it's an animal, and it tells you, you know, it kind of dials it into the species, or maybe it gives you the genus or family or something. But it really helped pass the time by sometimes. Of course, I may have slowed us down quite a bit too, because it's really fun to see what different things are. Let's see what this is. See if it actually picks up the image here. I'm using my Seek. There it is. Take a picture of that and show you. Now, I just took the picture, but should show up as. Okay.
Kind of hard to see.
Can you see it? There. Well, it's backwards.
There you go.
Pink lady slipper. So I should have started with what's the Minnesota state flower. So that was a really cool find. Pink lady slippers are a fairly rare flower, because I think they're only in bloom for maybe 1 to 2 weeks, and they need certain conditions. So it's a rare find for us. We didn't mention this, but a benefit of doing the different seasons, being out there for fall, spring, summer. We didn't really do a calendar winter, but by being out there for those different seasons, you're going to see different plants in different states. So we were able to see plants when they first started coming up in the springtime. We were seeing them full bloom at times. In the summer, they looked a little different. In the fall, they looked different. So it was really cool just seeing the different taxa at different times of year. So it really, something I enjoyed was the Seek app, clearly. All right.
So we've come to the end of the trail. As you can see here, this is us at the northern terminus. So that was our ending point. Yeah.
So yeah, let's we want to open it up to questions, and we really appreciate everybody sticking around, and yeah, let's hear what kind of questions we have. Oh yeah. Okay, so one of the questions that we had was kind of just a follow-up on. Oh, should we go back? Here we go. Let's see. Well, we'll wait to see what we have a direct message of. There we go. So.
All right. So the first question is, did you say starting up north and heading south would be the best way to do the trail? So how we did it and how we would recommend doing it is starting at the south and going to the north. So that way you can kind of relive those parts of the trail by driving past them as you're kind of moving further up north. And since the trail is getting more difficult as you go further up north, it's kind of a good way to work your way into some of the more difficult areas.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Can you share the water filter name again?
Yeah. It's made by Katadyn, and Katadyn has, you know, a number of water filter products, but the one that we used was Be Free. And, you know, we're not sponsored by Katadyn, so, you know, do your own research. But Katadyn, I guess the Sawyer squeeze is very similar to the Katadyn Be Free in terms of the functionality. So, you know, look into those two. We really liked them. They're very lightweight, and they pack really tight too. So that was really big benefit.
All right, next question is, what section would you recommend for first-time SHT hikers?
Oh gosh, yeah. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, right? Because if you are going out for seclusion, I would suggest maybe not avoiding some areas, like maybe you don't want to hit up Bean and Bear Lake, that section. But if you want to go to the most popular area of the whole trail, I would say that's a good contender. I really liked, we didn't mention this, but some people, when they do north or southbound, through hikes or even section hiking, they kind of cut off that section that's south of Duluth. That's a good, 50 miles roughly of a mileage that you're cutting off. I think maybe 40 something. I would say don't do that. The sections that are south of Duluth were some of the coolest sections. I went to school there and I was unfamiliar with a bunch of those areas. And that would be, if you're coming from the cities, we're coming from the cities, so that's our experience. That's easy to get to. Check out those sections from the southern terminus to Duluth. Yeah, beautiful, and not too away from civilization, if you need to make a quick trip out of it.
All right, next question. What kind of packs did you have and what size were they? So I think mine was an Osprey 30 liter. Do you recall?
Yeah.
Mine was a bit smaller than the one James had. I want to say 30 liter.
Depending on the weekend, I kind of split my time between two different packs. If we were really trying to load it in, I would actually bring my big 75 liter pack, which probably is a little overkill. I don't think I ever had it totally full. But sometimes my 40 liter wouldn't do it. I think two people can get by on section hiking with two 40 liter packs, no problem. We were actually thinking about going even smaller for your pack, but 30 liter did it.
Yeah, we were also, maximum 3 nights on the trail. So for that length of trip, that was plenty.
From the Spear Hiking Trail here. Yeah.
Right.
So what was your favorite section? What was the most challenging? Yeah, let me think about that. Most challenging, I think what I'm thinking of when I think challenging are the days that we were getting rained on and the long mileage days. So it wasn't necessarily anything about the trail that made them most challenging. One particular day, I forgot to bring all of our snacks.
That was challenging for both of us.
But as far as certain sections, I mentioned south of Duluth section was just awesome to discover that. Don't skip that portion. Do that. Include that in your travels. But you do need to plan ahead for campsites because of reasons we mentioned.
Next question is, how many weekends did it take? And did you feel you missed out on other things during the 2 years you did this? So it took 8 trips total. And so I guess it was 2020 and 2021, but really about 366 days or something like that.
365.
So with the 8 weekends, it was kind of a big focus of ours, at least in the spring, summer, and fall seasons. It did take some planning, and there were definitely some things that we had to miss out on, particularly a couple graduation parties for your high school students. But just took some planning, and there were some times where we had, in May, I think we had like an option 1 weekend and an option 2 weekend. And so we kind of waited till it got closer to the time. We evaluated the weather, and we were able to kind of be flexible in that way.
Just to build off that really quickly, we've been asked before as well as what was our favorite time of year to hike? Is it in there somewhere? My personal favorite of our trips, as far as times of year, weren't actually like those midsummer really comfortable night hikes. I liked those shoulder seasons, the early semi-early spring, and the late fall ones that we did. They were cold nights, but they're really fun because you'd be out on the trail and sometimes we wouldn't see anybody for 10-20 miles.
Yeah, and no bugs, or
we get to
bugs.
Yeah, we get to a campsite, have it to ourselves. So we like the seclusion of that, but also it's something about, hiking in crisp air. We didn't do any calendar winter trips, but I've been out there in the winter before, and it's fantastic. I'd say the only time of year that I think it's pretty miserable would be that early spring melt off, when you get the snow melt and the muddy conditions. I'm sure the river and trail stream crossings are pretty miserable too. So take that with a grain of salt.
All right. Did you ever experience vehicle vandalism at the trailheads? I don't think we didn't personally, and I don't think we saw any either. We've heard a lot of reports about it, so it's something we were careful about, but not something that we experienced.
Maybe not a lot of reports, but we heard some reports.
Some reports, yeah. Also, okay, there's some questions about our thoughts on hiking poles. Do you want to speak a little bit about what we used?
Yeah, right.
Or on maybe also on whether or not you need them. I guess I'll start with that part.
Yeah.
So we probably hiked about the first half of the trail with no hiking poles, and having never hiked with a hiking pole, I didn't feel like I wished I had one at any point. We started hiking with them because we were planning a trip to Colorado where we knew there would be much more elevation. So that's when we started sort of trying them out. And I think we both found that they were kind of a nice addition to our supplies, with especially more of the hilly sections, the ups and the downs. And for those long days, it can really take some of the pain off.
Yeah, but I would also mention that we never used two sets of hiking poles. We only had one set.
Oh
Did you say
yeah,
that?
I did not say that. No.
So we had one set of hiking poles, and we would just each have one at any given time. When we were going on extra hilly or rocky spots, maybe I gave my extra pole to Madeline, but one time when we'd have two of them is during water crossings, Madeline would use both of them. Do you need them on the spear hiking trail? I'm not sure that I'm not sure you would have to have them, but Madeline mentioned some good reasons why you might consider it.
Yeah, especially if James is very steady on his feet for stream crossings. So I felt a little more timid with those. And so I found them to be a really good crutch for just feeling a little more assured on those areas.
If anybody wants to know what we were using, we had Lucky poles. We got aluminum and not carbon fiber. I chose that because they have a little bit better of a warranty system. I think it's like lifetime warranty for aluminum poles. And it's like, so you bend one, I mean, maybe you get a new set. Luckily we haven't had that happen, but also I think I'd rather have a bent pole than shattered pole, which is one of those material properties. I'm going to try to share this slide here because we had somebody from there we go. Yep.
Yeah, there's a question. Could you show your timeline slide again? So
Current slide.
Oh, we might have to. Okay, let's try. There it is. Current slide. Okay.
And if that's not the one that you're looking for, just let us know. All right. Which one? Yeah. Okay. What would we say the easiest section? Definitely from Duluth to about so north of Duluth. You're gonna go through like that's the Martin Road, from Martin Road to probably about Castle Danger. I would say it's pretty.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the easier sections, and the reason being it's flat and definitely easier as far as terrain, but mentally I don't know if I would say that was the easiest section, especially the time of year we went. It was I think it was fall when we were there weren't a lot of flowers, and it got a little bit repetitive, not the most scenic section of the trail. So although easy as far as terrain, I wouldn't recommend that as a first go at the trail.
You didn't love the grouse?
We did see a lot of grouse in the fall.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Martin Road trailhead to Castle Danger trailhead, pretty much that section. Yeah. Do we have any last questions that we need to cover, or are we good?
Or I think just this one.
Oh, how early did we go in May? Yeah, that's a good question. Look, definitely keep track of who's out there and what's going on, because you know, early May, we were able to go at like May 1st or something.
Some years it snows in May, or there is
Right.
snow in May. So we were really, I kind of made a 40-degree rule. I mean, it did drop below 40, but
Drop below
I
40.
didn't really want to be out there below 40 degrees. And so we were kind of looking for the ideal May weather. But yeah.
Yeah, early May was when we got out there, but definitely look into it. And yeah, we're gonna hand it back over to Barbara now. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yep, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Madeline and James, for sharing your wisdom and your experience. We really appreciate that. So for those of you who want to review this or pass it on to your friends, remember that this webinar is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel, so look it up there. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us tonight. A special thank you to those who donated at registration. If you're not already a member or haven't made a gift to the SHTA, please consider visiting superiorhiking.org to join or give. And support, because support from trail users like you powers our work to care for the SHT and to provide helpful resources like this. If you'd like to join us for more online events, please follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or sign up for our monthly Trail Mix e-newsletter. Again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you on the trail. Good night.